Hello everybody and welcome back to Dollar Tree Dinners. My name is Rebecca and today we're going to be starting a new filler series in between the $100. As I mentioned, I want to try a few new things, get some new ideas, and take you guys along that journey with me. One thing that you do not see me feature very often on my channel is lentils, and there is a reason for that. I've never really been much of a lentil eater. As a kid, my mom didn't really cook with those kinds of things. I remember most of our dinners being some form of meat, potatoes, and a vegetable. And as you can see, a lot of the meals that I cook are very similar to the meals that I grew up eating. So my sister, however, was a single mom, and I do remember her cooking with lentils from time to time, but I remember not liking the meals that she made with lentils, and that's not her fault. I just grew up assuming that I didn't like lentils, and as I've become an adult and learned more about cooking and tried new recipes, I have found that it was never the lentils. It was always the kinds of spices that are traditionally associated with lentils, things like allspice, cinnamon, cardamom, and curry powder. I don't particularly like those specific flavors. But it is such an inexpensive and nutritious food, and I want to try to learn to love lentils. So I want to integrate a series of cheap eats. This will be where I explore and try new recipes, hopefully from around the world, that are, for lack of a better term, cheap eats. Today we are going to be making a dish called Mujaddara. I may be saying that wrong. If I am, I apologize. This is a Lebanese rice and lentil dish. This one has been suggested to me to try many times by my followers. A lot of people say it's one of their favorite cheap go-to meals. And at its core, it is just 3 ingredients: lentils, rice, and a lot of onions. So it seems from what I've seen about this recipe that the majority of its flavor comes from onions, specifically caramelized onions or fried onions. And most versions that I have seen only call for a couple of seasonings, just salt and cumin. So brown lentils, rice, onions, salt, and cumin. This is the epitome of an inexpensive dish. There is also a pretty good chance that you already have the majority of these ingredients in your pantry. And if not, both the rice and the lentils can be purchased at Dollar Tree. In my experience, that is the cheapest place to buy those two things. And at least at my local grocery store, bagged onions do go on sale fairly frequently. Anytime I'm trying a new recipe, I usually reference dozens of recipes and preparation methods. The recipe that I'm primarily going to be using today is one from Feel Good Foodie, which I will link in the description box below. So without further ado, let's make some mujaddara. So the first step in making this, it says to soak 1 cup of long grain white rice. Other recipes that I saw call for jasmine or basmati rice. Use what you have. You can also buy jasmine rice at Dollar Tree as well. I like long grain white rice because I find it to be versatile and in most people's pantries, so I appreciate that this recipe calls for it. So it says to cover the rice with cold water and set it aside. And now for onions. Now this dish is very heavily onion based, so she calls for 2 onions. I am referencing some of her notes in the recipe as well as other recipes that I watched, and several of them include onions in the base dish as well, so in with the lentils and the rice. So I'm going to do 3 onions. Of course, save your onion peels for making stock. One of the onions is diced. And the other 2 onions are going to be thinly sliced for caramelization. So we're going to be frying the onions. It says a 1/2 cup of oil over high heat. I'm a little cautious about high heat, so I'm going to do medium high because my stovetop is finicky. And high heat on my stovetop is a lot hotter than high heat on other stovetops. Now we're supposed to fry these sliced onions in the oil for about 20 minutes. While we're caramelizing these onions, I feel like now is a good time to tell you guys a fun story, which is that I have had this channel for about 3 years, and I did start out with Dollar Tree content, and I was trying to kind of find my vision for the channel. And at some point I named it Cheap Eats, and I kept that for a little while. I was kind of inspired by a meal prep service here called Clean Eats with a Z at the end. And then a couple years ago I started my Dollar Tree Dinners TikTok channel, And that is when I changed the name of this channel to match that so that they were both the same. My original inspiration for Cheap Eats was to be able to branch out and not just show Dollar Tree meals, but show other meals as well, kind of within the $10 to $15 range. I was inspired by things like Emmy's Hard Time series or Frankie's Struggle Meal series. I like watching other budget content creators. So here are a few channels that I personally like to watch in case you want to check out any of them. There is Ardent Michelle, The Simplified Saver, Southern Frugal Mama, That Lisa Dawn, and C Mindy Mom. So feel free to check out any of those channels and I will link them in the description box as well. This is a better view where you can start to see our colors. So again, this is about halfway through. We are starting to get a little bit of golden brown on them and I am a little nervous about potentially burning them. So I did turn the heat down on my stovetop just a little bit just to make sure that it doesn't burn. Definitely caramelizing here. And I still have 9 minutes left, so I think I'm gonna turn the heat down even more because again, I don't want to burn these, but this is looking great so far. All right, I think that is about the right color that we're going for, so I'm gonna call that done, even though it still has 6 minutes left. You're gonna remove them to either paper towels or I have a tea towel to drain. And it says that they will crisp up as they cool. So now let's work on our Mujaddara. I'm gonna put a little bit of oil down because I'm adding onions to it. So again, I am using the Feel Good Foodies recipe as a base, but I'm also taking inspiration from several other recipes and videos that I watched of people making this dish. And a lot of those involve sauteing some onions in with the lentils and rice as well. And Feel Good Foodie does mention this in the notes for her recipe too. Just trying to soften the onions up a little bit. But we can go ahead and add in our lentils. This is 2 cups or about 12 ounces of lentils that have been rinsed. And now we're going to go in with 4.5 cups of water. And let that come up to a boil. So once boiling, we're supposed to cover that with a lid, reduce the heat to medium-low, and let this simmer for 15 minutes. I've seen a lot of versions of this served with a yogurt sauce. So for that, I have some plain non-fat yogurt. I have a cucumber, some garlic, and a fresh lemon. You can also use bottled lemon juice if you prefer. I'm gonna try to make this similar to how I make Greek tzatziki sauce, which I'm gonna start by peeling my cucumber. And I'm also going to remove the seeds. You can dice the cucumber, but I prefer to grate it. And I use the large grate on my box grater for that. I do want to mention that a lot of versions of this cucumber sauce also call for mint, either dried or fresh mint, but I have opted to leave that out for 2 reasons. Mint can be a little expensive. At my local grocery store, fresh mint is $1.99, and it's not a spice that you can really get at a place like Dollar Tree. So I'm going to leave the mint out. If you have it, feel free to add it in. But I think it makes this recipe a lot more expensive, and unless you're using it fairly frequently, it's probably not something I would buy just to make a single recipe. So I'm gonna add my 32-ounce tub of plain yogurt into a bowl. Along with the shredded cucumber and some salt as well, the juice of a lemon, and lastly I'm going to add 4 cloves of minced garlic. Now let's give that all a stir to combine. Give that a taste and see if we need to add any more salt to it. No, I think that's perfect. I feel like I could maybe even add a little bit more cucumber to it, but I think it'll intensify the flavors as it just sits. I'm actually going to transfer it back into the yogurt jar for storing in the fridge. So after 15 minutes, we're supposed to add in our rice and our salt. 1 teaspoon of salt and our pre-soaked white rice. This has been soaking the entire time that we've been cooking, and all I did was drain it and rinse it. Get that all incorporated. Cover and cook for another 15 minutes. Remove the pot from heat, rest for 5 minutes. So after 5 minutes, we are supposed to fluff it and add the cumin, which is about 2 teaspoons. I'm not quite sure why she recommends to add it at the end. I assume it has a bit of a brighter flavor when it's added at the end as opposed to when it's cooking. I'm kind of impressed. I figured that there really wasn't enough moisture to cook both rice and lentils, but it does seem to have cooked all the way through. Although it is a little gummy, and I did see a few people in the comments say that they should have reduced the cook time, that their lentils cooked down a little bit too much, which looks like that happened to me as well. Let's go ahead and fix us a plate. Yeah, so ours is a little sticky, it's a little gummy. So I feel like you could reduce the cook times a little bit, as a few people in the comments suggested. But now we're supposed to top it with our crispy fried onions. And I'm going to try it as is before I add the yogurt sauce. So we're going to try it with both. We're going to try it both with and without the yogurt sauce. So let's start with just the plain Mujaddara. This is just the rice with the lentils, salt, cumin, and the caramelized onions. I shouldn't be surprised because this is a very well-known cultural dish, but I am a little bit surprised at how flavorful this dish really is. And it really speaks to something that I try to get across in a lot of my videos, which is that seasonings are great, but good cooking techniques are even better than seasonings. Just taking the time, like caramelized onions pack such an intense flavor punch that it really adds so much to this dish. If you follow this recipe as it's written, you may find that the lentils and rice are a tad bit overcooked, but I actually really like that part of it because I like the differing textures with the soft rice and the soft lentils, but then you have those crispy onions. I like the difference between those two. I don't think I would like it as much if there was still a bit of a bite in the lentils and in the rice. But we also have to try it with our cucumber yogurt. It's always interesting to me, my predisposition to certain foods, because I expected to like this better with the yogurt, but I actually think I like it better without the yogurt. I think the yogurt is good, don't get me wrong, but it almost kind of overpowers the very subtle flavors that are in this dish. So if you're gonna make the yogurt, which I do recommend, it is delicious, less is more when it comes to yogurt. It should just be a little tiny hint of it just to add a little freshness, a little zest to it. But if you put a lot on there, it's gonna overpower everything, and that's all you're gonna be able to taste. I'm gonna have to say that I definitely recommend this recipe. It is worth trying, especially if you already have the ingredients on hand. In case you don't, let's do a cost breakdown of everything. I'm gonna base it based on Dollar Tree and or Food Lion prices. So let's start with the base, which is just the lentils, the rice, and the onions. As I mentioned, I recommend buying the lentils and the rice at Dollar Tree. Those are $1.25 each. At my Food Lion, a 1-pound bag of rice is $1.19. And a 12-ounce bag of lentils was $1.39. So you can see how it's much cheaper at Dollar Tree. You come out to about $2.50 for the lentils and the rice. If you had to buy cumin, you definitely could add an extra like $1 onto that, but I recommend making this when you can get a bag of onions on sale for about $1.99. And you're gonna need about 3 onions if you make it the way I did today. So that's gonna put your base cost at $4.50 to make this entire pot. And if you wanted to add the cucumber yogurt sauce, the yogurt at my Food Lion was $2.39. The cucumber was 69 cents, a lemon was 99 cents, and a head of garlic was also 99 cents. So that's gonna add an extra $5 or so to add the yogurt sauce, but I think it's just as good with the yogurt as it is without it. And it is a great recipe. Again, I shouldn't be surprised because this has probably existed for a lot longer than I have. and it's a very traditional dish, but I'm happy that I tried it. I would definitely make this again, and it might be something that I integrate into future meal plans, which is the entire point of trying some of these recipes, is to get some ideas for things that I can talk about in the future as well. Is there a similar dish that you think I should try? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I will see you again soon.